And welcome to the welcome to the show, everybody. My name is Kevin, and Rochelle is right there. We've got a great show for you today. We're going to talk about one of the major things that is going on in our world right now, and that's happening to all of our kids. And some of them are ending up doing something that nobody expected them to do, which is commit suicide and that kind of thing. And we are going to be talking with Simone Ellin, and she's a New York-based psychotherapist, and we're going to be getting into this conversation in just a second. Are you ready, Rochelle?
I'm ready. Let's do it. Don't go anywhere, anybody.
There's a moment in every life when you decide to rise.
To stand taller than your fear.
To speak louder than your doubt.
To chase the vision that sets your soul on fire.
This is that moment. And here we walk it together with stories that awaken, voices that inspire,
and truths that set you free.
This is Positive Talk Radio with Kevin
and with Rochelle,
where hope has a voice.
And that voice is yours.
And welcome to the show, everybody. My name again is Kevin, and Rochelle is right there. And we have go call your friends, call your family, have them listen to this show either now or later. They can go to YouTube or Facebook or LinkedIn, but it's a very important show that we've got for you today because we're going to talk about, and it's becoming. Well, I don't know, Rochelle. Is bullying a new thing, or it was around when I was a kid?
Oh yeah, I think that it's been around for generation on generation. Probably, I think even animals bully each other. we're just creatures of nature, and that's okay. But the social side of the online bullying has taken a different form, especially since I was a teenager. But I myself went through the bullying hells, and I came out the other side. So Simone's here to teach us how people can do that, even as adults. I think we might even bully ourselves and not realize it. So thank you for being here, Simone. How are you?
Oh, thank you for having me. Great. I'm really happy to be here.
It's exciting to talk to you about a subject that, unfortunately, it was in the news today. A 13-year-old child, just after their birthday, committed suicide because of bullying. And nobody apparently knew what was going on, which is a common thing, which it seems really weird, but it's a common thing, isn't it, Simone, that kids are bullied and they don't want to tell people about it and stuff. And
right.
So their parents and family and friends, a lot of times they have no idea. Is that right?
Yeah, that is right, because a lot of times when kids tell somebody, their situation gets worse. So, they feel like they're better off keeping it to themselves.
But that seems counterintuitive to me. But I suppose when you're that and when you're a young kid and you're being bullied, do you tend to blame yourself, or are you blaming the people that are actually responsible for this despicable behavior?
A lot of times you are blaming yourself because you assume that something's wrong with you, or you wouldn't be getting picked on. You internalize those feelings that something must be wrong with you. And in my work, what I found out is that this feeling that something's wrong with you and the insecurity and low self-esteem and depression that goes along with that can stay with some people and throughout their entire lives. I mean, people in their 60s and 70s and 50s are still dealing with the ramifications of that bullying.
Now,
sorry.
Go ahead, Rochelle. No, go ahead.
I just wanted to know, so you're a licensed psychotherapist. What made you go down the route of focusing on this particular thing so much?
It was my own experience. And I don't know, do you want me to talk to you about how this project started?
Yes, please do, because it bears into everything that you're doing now.
Yeah. I think it's an interesting story. So I realized about 5 years ago that I was still hadn't been able to let go of these resentments that started really in middle school. I had a colleague who was bullying me because, as you may know, workplace bullying is a huge problem. Um, and one day I was sitting with my editor. I was working at a magazine, and still work at the magazine. And he was asking me, what was going on with that, because everybody at the office knew what was going on. And as I was talking to him about the workplace bullying, I suddenly realized that I felt as if I was in middle school again, back in middle school again. And I thought more about that, and I realized that, I just really had never recovered from my friends giving me the silent treatment in the 7th grade. Um, I got this idea that I wanted to interview the bullies and also interview my other classmates from middle school and high school about their experience of the social scene at our school. So I started reaching out to my classmates, my former classmates, and I interviewed about 45 of the women that I had gone to school with. And I asked them about their experience, and I talked to the bullies, and I got lots of apologies. And I also learned a lot about what my classmates were going through and what might have caused this to happen. I also spoke to other people who were victimized. I spoke to some people that were bullies themselves. I spoke to people who were just bystanders who had nothing to do with it. And the whole experience was really healing. I wrote an article about it for Huffington Post, and it went viral with about 3.6 million views so far. So I realized I had hit a nerve, and at that point, I started writing a book. So that's kind of the story of how it got started. And then at the same time, I was a former therapist. And because of my fascination with this topic, I decided to go back to being a therapist. And I did lots of research and training and things like that so that I could work with other survivors of bullying as well as other people.
It's amazing. You know what I realized too, and I've been telling Kevin that I realized this in the last year, is I was bullied for so long that naturally I became the bully out of defense for myself. Do you see that that's quite
Yes.
often in people?
Yes, yes. The one particular person, well, a couple of particular people that I can think of that I interviewed spoke about that. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you find yourself in a situation where you're being persecuted, one response is just to kind of go go into yourself and, kind of hide from the world, and another is to lash out yourself and to find a way to get some power back. So
Makes
it's very
sense.
common. A lot of
Haven't you
times. Sorry, go ahead.
No, you're okay. Kevin, haven't you seen that? How people sometimes it's not just one or the other, but throughout their lives, maybe they'll switch and either go internal or they'll become external.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Of course you don't.
Yeah, it is a natural reaction. When you are being bullied, you turn around and bully other people, or it seems like it. And it's a self-defense mechanism, maybe. I don't know, Simone. Is it a self-defense mechanism, or is it just because you're so used to being mean to or you're so used to other people being mean to you that it's now just okay for you to be mean to other people?
No, I think it is I think it is a defense mechanism. A lot of times what you see also, and this happened in particular to one of my bullies, was that she was being bullied at home by family members. So she saw that I was kind of vulnerable and quiet and a little insecure, and she started bullying me. When I finally interviewed her all these years later, she apologized to me profusely, and she told me that she was being sexually abused at home. And this was her way of getting some control back by bullying me, taking out her anger and her pain on someone else.
And that's exactly why I bring that up, because if we're the ones being bullied, learning how to respond to that can be the difference of the entire situation and whether that goes past that moment or stops at that moment, right? In a way.
Yeah, I mean, that's true. And unfortunately, and this was the case with my work, I'm mostly dealing with people who haven't been able to stop what's going on to them when they're children. And in my case, I didn't really recover from it till I was in my 50s. My work is in part to try to help people before they get to that point, so they don't spend like their whole lives having all of these symptoms that came out of being bullied as children.
Good.
That is just it's crazy that we as humans, we don't recognize the value in each other, but a lot of that has to do with their upbringing and how they were abused. There was a kid when I was in first and second grade. His name was David, and his dad was very mean to him, and so he decided that that was the way that you acted towards other people. So he was mean, and he would as Rochelle says, they would drop hands at the moment at a moment's notice and start fighting, and was just a really mean person because that's what he grew up with. That's what his dad did to him, and stuff. And I want to ask you, but before I go there, we've got a gentleman that we get to talk to on a regular basis. He is far from being a bully. He helps people. Well, I'll just let Rochelle go. Go for it, Rochelle.
Yes. Hi, Samuel. Thank you for being the peacemaker, not the bullier. I love you for that. He says, hello, Brother Kevin McDonald, Sister Ambassador Rochelle, and guest Simone Ellin. Warm greetings from Kiberia Restoring Hope Center, located in the heart of the Kiberia slums. We sincerely thank you for hosting coaches, inspirational speakers, mentors, and for shining a light on our weekly feeding program, No Child Goes to Bed Hungry. Your support in sharing our mission with the world means so much to us. Together we are strong. Together we are one. With gratitude, Kiberia Restoring Hope Center. Thanks for joining us in, everybody. We love you, and stay for this entirety. This is important no matter what age group you're in, and can provide lots of learning.
And bullying is, I think, a universal human problem. And it doesn't matter what country you're in, or it doesn't matter necessarily what society you're part of.
Right.
Bullying is a big deal, no matter where you are. Is that right?
Yeah, it occurs in every society, and it's been going on, since we first started recording human history. When it first started, it actually had to do with evolution in some sense, in the sense that groups had to stay together for their safety and to make sure they ate and to make sure they found mates. So a lot of times people would bully one member of the group, and it was a life and death situation in that case, because that person who was excluded from the group then wouldn't have food. They could be attacked by other predators. It was and unfortunately, our bodies really haven't taken in the information that that's no longer necessary for our survival. So that's one of the reasons why bullying continues, we think.
Is that fight or flight reaction that we have still?
We do still have that. Yeah, we feel like that we're actually in danger when these things happen to us.
So if somebody's out there thinking, well, I've never been a bully, what's the definition of a bully to you? I think we might all be able to humble ourselves a little bit.
Well, there's a lot of disagreement in the field about exactly what it is. There was a psychologist named Daniel Alves, who was kind of called the father of bullying research. He was Scandinavian, and he started doing all this research, and he created the Alves Bullying Prevention Program, which is sort of the most famous bullying prevention program that's still used at many schools. So basically, there has to be a pattern. In his definition, there has to be a pattern of like abusive behavior. It could be verbal, it could be physical, it could be relational, which means social, like excluding people. And nowadays, it also could be cyber, obviously. So his definition involved that there had to be kind of ongoing bullying. It couldn't just be like a one-time thing. I happen to think that it can be a one-time thing. It depends a lot on the victim, where the victim's coming from, what their background is, what their actual physiological sensitivity to things in. There's a lot of reasons why one person will react badly to bullying and another person can kind of brush it off.
That makes sense.
So I don't know if that answered your question quite, but
No, I mean, how do we really know? And Kevin, you probably agree, but my definition of bullying is if you go out of your way, your time and space to negatively affect somebody else and take away their happiness, you're bullying them.
Especially if you are taking the position that you are going to improve yourself or to uplift your standing by bullying somebody else and lowering them, and then celebrating the fact that you are raising yourself up. I've got a story around that when we come back. And I want Simone's attitude, because this was a 10-year bullying story as an adult for me, because it didn't necessarily end when I was a child. It continued, and I didn't know how to handle it at the time, and but I'd love for your opinion on it. So we need to take a quick break, and we will be right back. What am I playing, Brichelle?
Let's start this week off with a powerful declaration, shall we?
We can. I can do that. My cursor was right on it. So we'll be right back, everybody. For way too long, we've allowed shadows to dictate our steps. Our clamor of division, the whisper of fear, and the harsh grip of hate. They've tried to define us. But this is our moment of truth. We remember who we truly are. Not just separate islands, but a vast ocean of shared humanity. We declare our independence from the narratives that have pulled us apart. We choose curiosity over judgment, empathy over indifference, understanding over accusation. This isn't about ignoring our differences. It's about celebrating the strength woven into our tapestry. It's about remembering that progress isn't built on exclusion, but on common ground. So let the banners of kindness fly high. Let the anthem of unity ring out. This is our declaration, our independence from what limits us, our freedom to truly connect. Because together we are stronger. And together we are free. And this declaration is brought to you by Positive Talk Radio. And welcome back to Positive Talk. My name is Kevin, and Brichelle is right there, and we've got a great guest for you. Simone Ellin is here, and by the way, I want to thank you again for coming and sharing your wisdom with us, because it's important. But I want to go back to the mists of time when I had taken a new job. I was a new salesperson in a food company, and one of the things that we would have to do every now and again is we'd have to go meet the truck, because there may be a product that was on the truck that we needed to pull off for a customer. And there was a particular driver. His name was Tim. And Tim, if you're listening to this, I hope you've changed your ways, but he was a very difficult guy. He took absolute pleasure in being mean and making it more difficult for the sales guys. So sometimes he wouldn't let me take the product off the truck, and other times he would tell me that he was someplace else and stuff. So it became a very difficult thing. Well, fast forward 10 years, my wife was at the gym in the cycling class, and she tells me about this guy by the name of Tim, who she became a very good friend with. And she loved him like a brother. I had no idea that incest was involved, but apparently, so she had an affair with Tim, and even through and which, by the way, ended our marriage, but it was through all of that 10 years that he was a bullying type, and that continued all the way through to the point where he was willing to go and have an affair with somebody that he knew. And I'd known him for a long time. How common is that? I mean, I think he was just a horribly dysfunctional individual. But is that
So he knew that your wife was your wife? Like, she
yes.
wasn't, so he didn't just meet a random person, he actually knew. So, I mean, I guess it's possible that he was still trying to one-up you.
Apparently he did, and he succeeded.
All those years later, I mean, there's a lot of, one of the things I learned that I was surprised about was that I always thought that bullies were necessarily people who were envious of you, who came from disturbed backgrounds, who were jealous of you. What I learned is that while there are some bullies that do it for that reason, there are other bullies that simply do it because it makes them feel powerful, and it ups their social status. I mean, my bully, one of my bullies, sort of the head of the girls' clique that dumped me, she told me when I interviewed her, I wanted to be the most popular girl in school, and I was willing to do whatever it took. And, basically, I recognized that you had a lot of gifts, but you were also insecure and vulnerable. And when you're 12 years old, you don't want to be around anything like that. You're afraid that it will bring your social standing down and somehow rub off on you. And, with her goal to be the most popular girl, that wasn't going to work for her. So she dumped me. And she got all her friends to dump me. So, so that was like an interesting thing. I had not known that it wasn't necessarily people who were insecure themselves. Yeah.
Well, in that case, Simone, I'm so curious because even in Kevin's situation, you'll see a lot of times, like if you're friends with the bully and then the bully bullies you, all of your friends, all the groups, everybody, they'll still stay with that person. They'll follow them, and you're just like gone now. You're not a part of the group.
That's right.
Do people stay friends with the bully out of fear? Because a lot of times they're the nicest people that are friends with the bully.
Yeah, because they're afraid that if they try to protect you, or if they stay friends with you, then they'll be next to be kicked out of the group. It's a problem, and I mean, a lot of schools are using prevention programs where they try to train bystanders to stand up for their classmates. And it doesn't work that well because most kids are too scared to stand up. It's just too risky for them socially.
And then in the adult world, they're like, do you want to know what happened?
Well, not only socially, but physically, because if you're going to stand up to a bully, and a lot of times bullies are not little kids, they're somebody that's a little bit bigger that feels like they can throw their weight around.
Right.
And so if you're going to tell a bully to knock, that's why I know you've seen this. There are lots of movies out now about how the bully gets put into his place by somebody during the course of the movie. And there are reels about it and all that kind of stuff, because nobody wants to be that bully, or people want to be able to stand up to that bully, because that takes a certain amount of bravery, but it can also be kind of foolhardy if you're not prepared for what can happen to you.
Yeah, so most of my work was with women, and although some women get involved in physical fights, it's more common for girls and women to bully relationally, which means like I'm having a party and everyone's invited except for you, or like what happened to me where everyone just one day. Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, it's okay. I was so thankful.
Oh, well, that's good. That's good. But probably when you were like 12, you wouldn't have been thankful. You probably would have been crushed, right? So, where was I going with that?
The
Yeah,
differences
so
between
boys,
boys and
right.
girls. Yeah.
So one of the reasons I didn't write about boys, at least yet, was because it usually takes a very different form with boys. And oftentimes with boys, it is physical bullying, verbal bullying. With girls, it's usually kind of more like underhanded, like, they kind of understand the social scene and they know how to manipulate it, and they do it in such a way where it's like hard for people outside to even know that it's happening, which is one reason why it's really hard for parents and teachers to intervene. They don't necessarily even know about it. Um, but typically it's more likely to be social than physical.
Girls can be insidious because I remember being at a party, a group of, there were like 6 guys and one girl. Another girl comes in, and then we're having this conversation for a while. And the guys, we were just being teenage boys. We were oblivious. We had no earthly idea what was going on. And so one of the girls gets up and leaves. And the other girl says, "Can you believe the way she was looking?" And none of us got any of it. But she was truly offended by how this other woman or girl had acted in her presence. And no, we didn't get it at all because we didn't understand the dynamic. But
Right.
girls can be really, really, really underhanded, can't they?
I mean, I hate saying that because girls are also wonderful,
Yes.
and they have their reasons for feeling like their social status is important, especially when it comes to boys. And again, that's like an old survival thing from generations ago where girls had to find a mate, so they had to be competitive with other girls. Nowadays, again, it's not a life and death thing. They don't have to act like that, but somehow their brains don't know that and they still do it. But yeah, girls tend to be more emotionally intelligent, I would say, or at least at an earlier age. They recognize social cues, many of them, and they really understand um, relationships and socialization. I mean, interestingly, many of the girls in the group that dumped me have become therapists themselves. And I actually tried to find research about whether that was a trend or why that was. I didn't find anything, but the only thing that I can imagine is that it has to do with emotional intelligence, um, to really, really understand people, and it's helpful not only when you're trying to help people, but also when you're trying to hurt people.
Is
That
there?
makes
Yeah, go ahead,
Go ahead,
Michelle.
Kevin. I was just gonna say it that makes so much sense because like you hear about boys and they'll have their problems and then they'll have a fist fight and then it's over. Whoever wins wins and that's that, and you move along and maybe they're even friends now. But with girls, there has to be this emotional connection. Um from what I've noticed, they can fight each other until the death. They can hold grudges until they go to their graves. But unless they come to an understanding where they bond emotionally, that bullying never really ends. Have you seen that is kind of true?
Yeah, I mean the general, we hear examples all the time of how boys, will have a fight and then walk away and forget about it and be friends the next minute. I think it's a generalization, just as it's a generalization to say that all girls are, have superior emotional intelligence. But I think that in general, girls are much more likely to take things to heart, and that can manifest in more trouble with forgiveness and moving on.
Makes sense.
And by the way, we're talking with Simone Ellin. Rochelle, her website is.
Yes, follow along with us. Her website is SimoneEllin.com. Her last name is Ellin, in case you're not watching this. And she's got all sorts of things on her website to check out, including the Bullying Project.
And when we come back from this break, we've spent a lot of time talking about what bullying is. Now let's talk about your work and how you can help people who have been subjected to it for a very long time get over it and start leading a better life, because it can be self. Well, you'll tell us when we come back from this break. We'll be right back. You're listening to Positive Talk Radio Network. We're on a mission to entertain, enlighten, empower, and educate through inspiring music, dynamic conversations, and yes, laughter. Join me, Kevin McDonald, and Brishelle as we declare our freedom from hate, division, and fear and celebrate a better way of living. Go to positivetalkradio.net to find out more.
If you're a woman running a business and feeling stretched, overwhelmed, or stuck in reaction mode, this isn't a you problem, it's a CEO shift problem. The Women's Success Summit is where women entrepreneurs stop working in their business and start leading it like the CEO. You'll leave with clarity, strategy, and an action plan that you can actually use right now. If you're serious about your business and your growth, this room is for you. Don't miss the Women's Success Summit, April 13th. Connect with a community of powerful women and gain real strategies to grow your business. Seats are limited. Register at p2q.link/summit26.
And welcome back to gosh, I haven't done that before, but welcome. Brishelle and I are here, and Simone Ellin is with us, and she's got a book coming out, but she's not allowed to tell me what it is yet because it's not out yet. And when it comes out, she's going to come back to the show, and we're going to talk about it. But Simone, I know that you interviewed 30 or 40 women that had gone through this. How many of them had made peace with it and was able to get on with their lives? And then how many of them carried the scars of the bullying into adulthood and beyond?
So I interviewed not only people who had been bullied, but also people who bullied, also people who weren't involved in bullying. So, but I would say that the women that I spoke to who had been bullied had carried at least remnants of the feelings that they had about those experiences with them. I had one woman tell me that because the girls in her clique were such bullies, she didn't have a woman friend until she was in her 40s because she didn't trust other women. I had other people who told me that, that I had another person tell me she couldn't handle being in groups of women. She would feel too insecure. She would feel, the sense that maybe they would gang up on her. What else? People who had a lot of anxiety all the time, social anxiety. People who had trouble in relationships as a result of the bullying because they either tended to choose people who would bully them again because that was the kind of behavior they were familiar with in relationships. People who would have a lot of trouble trusting in relationships, and I mean adult relationships. People who were more prone to depression because they had such poor self-images. People who were angry but couldn't express it, so turned their anger against themselves and had chronic depression. There are a lot of mental health problems that people have from bullying if they don't recover from it early on. They even have physical symptoms. They may be less successful in their careers. There are so many ways in which childhood bullying affect people.
Brishelle?
Did you find that through the people that you've been able to talk to that were the bullies, that throughout their life, their upbringing usually involved a older adult bully?
Sometimes. I also have talked to a lot of people who are bullied by siblings. And sibling bullying is one of the most pervasive kinds of bullying, and it's the most overlooked, because parents don't necessarily realize that what's going on between their kids isn't just normal, like sibling rivalry or bickering. Sometimes what's happening is really, really abusive, and nobody stops it. So, I talk to women who were physically abused by their siblings, sexually abused, verbally abused. A lot of times it's an older brother and a younger sister. And in those cases, it really can affect their relationships with men going forward, their romantic relationships. It's a big problem that nobody sees and nobody talks about, and there's very little research on it still. Yes. Do you
And
have something to say, Kevin?
Kevin,
I
I
do.
want you to share your perspective because it's very different between me and Kevin. I was an only child, and I used to think that that's why I got bullied and picked on is because I didn't have siblings. So there was something wrong with me because I didn't know how to get along with other kids or whatever it was.
Mhm.
But Kevin grew up in that space. So whether he was away from home or in his home, it was still present. Right,
Oh,
Kevin?
I'm sorry, Kevin.
I had my sister was 5.5 years older. My mother was ill, so my sister had a lot of responsibility. And when an 11-year-old girl is responsible for two younger brothers, and to keep quiet so that dad doesn't get mad because dad comes home from work and he wants it to be a quiet house, and she had to cook dinner and all that kind of stuff. So that was her deal. My older brother, I was the youngest. My older brother he didn't feel loved. He wasn't the oldest. He wasn't the youngest. He was the middle child, and he looked different and he acted different. And so one day when I was 11 years old, he had taken a ladder, and we had a big apricot tree in the backyard, and he had taken a rope and had tied it to the branch or to the one of the big branches, and then there was a loop at the other end. And I had just seen the trailer for Hang 'em High. And so I, being an 11-year-old kid, climbed up on the ladder and pretended that I was about ready to be hung. And I put my head in through the noose, and my brother pulled the ladder away.
Oh my God. So what happened
You
then?
never told us. Was your sister the savior at least? Because who got you down?
Well, as I was screaming and stuff, he put the ladder back, and so, but I had, and this is the bizarre part of it, Simone, is that I had rope burns from ear to ear. Fortunately, it wasn't a slip knot, so it didn't break my neck, but I had rope burns. And when we went inside, and then he took those little itty bitty Band-Aids and he put it all around my neck so that nobody would see, you see. But they figured it out. But my mother did not do anything.
Really?
I think she was so shocked that could actually even happen, that she didn't do anything. And so, and my brother used to hold me down and put grass up my nose and leaves and all that kind of. He threw me in the dryer one time and turned it on. And I mean, it wasn't very nice. And so because of that, he and I never, and he's passed now, and but we never had a very good relationship. And I asked him throughout our life, why did you do that? What was going through your mind when you pulled the ladder away? And he never would answer me. To the day he passed away, he would never answer me. And so that was a really hard moment for me. And I was the youngest. So, and I tended to get bullied. I could take a punch really well because I learned how I had to and stuff. So anyway.
See, but here is such the powerful form of this is we go through things like this, but we also have it in us to forgive that and move on from it. I mean, Kevin has created the most beautiful events and moments and a legacy here on Positive Talk. And you would never think, oh, well, he didn't go through that. And yeah, we all are going through things like that that maybe people don't know about.
Yes.
But how do you work with people to move on from that and
Well,
release it?
first of all, I mean, one of the biggest things that came out of my project was realizing that you have no idea what's going on in anyone else's life. And even though I knew that intellectually, when I actually heard these stories, because not many, but some of the people that I spoke with were having abuse of various kinds at home. You just don't realize what people are carrying around with them and how it might affect their behavior. Um, but in terms of moving on, the first thing is that many people, especially adults who've been bullied, don't really think it's still affecting them. Or if they do, they're too embarrassed to admit that it is. They're kind of like, this happened so long ago, I need to get over it. And, it couldn't be affecting me still today. But oftentimes it is. So the first thing that's really important for people to do, yes.
I'm hugging
I,
you.
am sorry, but I have to tell you, and this is in line with what you're talking about, because this happened when I was 11 years old, and the story became a family story. Remember the time your brother hung you? It's like, and I've never heard of anybody else having that story. So it was really a unique story. But when he came down with stage 4 lung cancer and was terminal, the whole thing resurfaced like it happened just yesterday. Only I was indignant because why would he do such a thing? And I wanted an answer, damn it. But he wasn't capable of providing that answer. But it affected it. And I was surprised at how much, what was it, 50 years later, how much it still affected me. And so your point is very well taken. It can rear its ugly head when you get triggered by something that may be totally unrelated, but it's related somehow. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. No, that's true. I mean, I just have to say that is a horrifying story. And I can only imagine how horrible it would have been if he had been successful. Not only for you, obviously, but for him too. I mean,
Oh,
to have
yeah.
to have to live with something like that, and the fact that, your parents kind of just didn't do anything about it is remarkable, but probably not that remarkable because I think a lot of parents just don't take these things seriously. Um, so yeah, I think a lot of people, especially people who, come from families where people don't talk about their emotions, um, don't ever talk about these things. And they chastise themselves for still thinking about them and still having feelings about them and still holding grudges. So the first thing is that people need to talk about it. Um, whether that be with friends or a therapist is probably a good thing to do. And be helped to recognize that yes, this happened and this was traumatic and this affected your life, and it's okay to be angry or sad about it. And I think that has to happen before people can move on.
Yeah.
You don't have to forgive the person necessarily, but if you do forgive the person, it can be a big relief to you. And that's not the same as making friends with them or even letting them know that you've forgiven them. But actually, that comes later. So there are different kinds of therapies that are particularly helpful with this. Um, one of them is called trauma-focused cognitive behavioral therapy, and it's a type of therapy that's similar to cognitive behavioral therapy, which is when people have distorted beliefs about themselves, and the therapy attempts to help them to see that there are other ways of thinking and feeling about themselves. So using that type of therapy for bullying trauma has been found to be very successful. Another type of therapy is eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, EMDR. And that's a really interesting kind of therapy where people use bilateral eye movements that are given to them by the therapist, either electronically, you might see dots coming across the screen, or sometimes somebody will hold up a finger or a pen and they'll ask you to think about the experience and to think about where they're feeling it and where you're feeling it in your body. And the combination can actually change your brain in such a way that you remember the incident, but it doesn't have the power that it once had. So that's considered a good treatment for bullying. There's also somatic experiences. Again, this is focusing on the body and how the body processes emotions. There's internal family systems therapy, which is a therapy where people recognize that each of us has different parts in our brains. And oftentimes when something bad happens, certain parts kind of get hijacked and they inhibit the person's recovery. They don't let them really look at the painful thing that's happened. And so it's very difficult to move on with it. So there are many types of treatment that can be helpful with bullying that's happened in childhood that's still staying with people in their adulthood. But the first thing that has to happen is that people have to recognize that this actually is a problem and it's continuing to affect their behavior and their feelings and their bodies years and years and years later.
That is a really big deal, and Rochelle, go ahead. I know you've suffered a lot of that as well, and and Simone, I'm sorry, I was going to ask you to speak, and then I interrupted you, and you didn't even say anything yet. But Simone, and I have to tell you, when I was in grade school, and I was a stronger kid, and so I played the quarterback. Well, a new kid came, Kirk McManus. If you're still listening, I hope that you. Anyway, but a new kid came, and so then it became a rivalry between him and I. And I'd been around for like 5 or 6 years, and so they knew me. But this is the new kid, and so he had a certain amount of celebrity and stuff. So it became a real problem between us, and none of the teachers recognized it. None of the teachers would sit down and say, okay, you guys need to calm down and work through it. It's just an amazing thing how that happens. And it still happens to this day, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. Absolutely. Absolutely. And sometimes the teachers are the bullies themselves. I mean, that also happens.
Well,
teachers have favorites. Teachers overlook, things that are going on right in front of them because they just don't want to deal with it and get involved. Does something like that happen to you, Rochelle?
yes, and we've got a comment I'm going to pull up, and then Kevin, if we can play for our last commercial. I forgot when we did the first, our points to ponder. If we could play self-compassion, I would love to do that before we end. And then I've got a quick little story. But first, Lisa Conway is here. She says, is EMDR standard treatment for trauma?
Yes, it is.
Perfect.
It's been found to be very successful in helping people with trauma. And I should probably say that not everybody considers bullying a trauma. I do. It has many things, in common with other types of trauma.
Yes.
I'm aghast. How can somebody say that bullying isn't a trauma? Because for the person that's being bullied, it is the most consequential that's happening to them that day or that week or that month. It's a really big deal.
It is a really big deal, but people tend to devalue it. I mean, until very recently, it was just considered a rite of passage, right? That this is just something kids do. There's nothing you can do about it. And I mean, yeah, it does happen, and it does happen in spite of, prevention programs and other efforts to stop it. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't try those things and we shouldn't try to keep making them better.
And Simone, we're going to take this quick break, but when we come back, I want you to talk about how, because kids are dying, and anytime that we hear that kids are dying, that become, in my mind, in my world, that becomes a really, 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 really big deal. And I would love for you to give the parents in our audience and caregivers and teachers and stuff some things to look out for, some ideas of how they can help cut it off at the pass, if you will, so that the kid doesn't go down that rabbit hole and ends up in well, I don't want to go there, but ends up in a bad place.
There's
So we'll
always
be
signs, always.
but the two of you can address that when we come right back. Why is it, do you suppose, that we are our own harshest critics, maintaining a standard for ourselves that we would never demand of a friend? We mistake self-criticism for discipline, but real growth requires a different environment, one of self-compassion. When we quiet the internal judge, we find the clarity and the energy we need to actually improve. True strength begins with the peace you make with yourself. And welcome back to Positive Talk. My name is Kevin, and Brachelle's right there. And Brachelle, I had not seen the cat there before. Did you see the cat?
Yes, you didn't notice that? Of course
I didn't notice the cat. Anyway, Simone Ellin is with us, and she is an expert on helping people get out of bullying, either as a kid, as an adult. And I would love your thoughts, Simone, on some tips for people that have kids who they think may be getting bullied or have no idea that
or
they
are
may
the
be,
bully.
or are the bully.
Right.
Give us some tips that parents can understand.
Well, first of all, I mean, it's really important to establish an environment in your household where your kids can talk to you. It's really important to let them know that unconditionally it's okay to talk to you. And then you kind of have to figure out the best way to go about dealing with the bullying without making your child even more of a victim, right? I recommend, talking to people at school, while, making sure that the adults that you're talking to know that, they have to deal with it very gingerly and sensitively so that, the other kids at school do not think of him as a tattletale or trying to get them in trouble. I also think that it's really important to get your child counseling as soon as possible. You may want to do some role playing with your child in terms of, what to say or what to do when you're being bullied. If your child isn't talking to you, you should notice if there are signs of depression or anxiety. If you notice that your child is not eating or eating too much, not sleeping too much, if they're even moodier than usual, and that's hard to distinguish with adolescents. It's hard to know whether it's just hormonal or if there's actually something going on. But really pay attention to these things. If you notice that your kid doesn't seem to be having friends over anymore, if you notice that they are just sad, that they're not interested in doing the activities that they once got pleasure out of. And I think you've got to be, also aware of what's going on online with your kids. It's a fine line between being too intrusive and being aware of what's going on online. But I think that it's really important that you not let your kid have their phone all day long without knowing what they're doing on it. And, the same with their computers. Maybe try to have their computers in a place that the whole family can kind of see what's going on. Um, and I also think that even though prevention programs in schools are not as helpful as we would hope, I mean, I think typically they reduce bullying by about 20%. Um, obviously we need to do better than that, but it's better than nothing. And one of the things that's most important, getting back to teachers and teachers being bullied, or bullying students. Actually, teachers can sometimes be the victims too. Um, but it's the programs that do the best are programs in which every single person in the school community is completely on board. So that means like the teachers, the administrators, the parents, the kids, the custodians, everybody in the school has to be on board and trained to know what to do when they see bullying happening at school. Um, because oftentimes, adults that work in the schools see it going on and they just ignore it. Um, and if you're trying to create an atmosphere of safety in the school, everybody needs to know what's going on.
It's amazing.
That, go ahead, Rochelle.
The only adults who never missed anything in the school were the lunch ladies. They
Yeah, because
and
that's
they were
where
the
the
only
bad
ones
stuff happens.
who would say something. Yeah. And Simone, I'm thinking of how important this is and how I know it's kind of hard when we're comparing adults and children, but there's got to be one way. And I would love for you to give us an example of something we can all work with. And here's why. I'm recognizing there was a situation who happened I was in 5th grade. And something happened. I was already getting in trouble in school, was getting bullied. Things were happening at home. I was just this psychotic kid, right? And everybody was just like, oh, Rochelle's just crazy. She's like that. Well, I had this one really, really tough day, and I wasn't as projected, and I got bullied more that day. And the one thing that happened was the kids out in the field had tied a bunch of rubber bands all over, held me down, poked me with sticks, and tied my hair in a million pieces, pulled my lashes like I was an animal. I felt like that. And then when we went back in from recess, I went to the teacher and I tried to express to her what had happened to me. She put me in the middle of the class in my own desk, crying, with my hair knotted and tied into all these crazy pieces, when that is the absolute last thing she should have done was project me. And I'm recognizing in this moment, and I'm giving myself a lot of love, that has affected me a lot throughout my life. And even in times where I was the center of attention, but it was good, I made it a negative because I was afraid or whatever it was. And now when something big comes up, sometimes I don't know how to handle it because it's me in the center. And it's scary to me, but in the sense of like, I used to practice in the mirror of what I was going to say to those kids and what I was going to tell that teacher. And I was crazy. I'd spend hours in my room, and my mom would come in. She's like, Rochelle, who are you screaming at? I'm like, God knows, Mom, but I'm just practicing, for when I build that up. And I never had the courage to ever really speak up for myself until I was just angry and aggressive. But how is there just something that we can take when things happen, whether it's an adult or a child, that we can handle these situations without putting it on the podium?
I mean, that's such a horrific story, Rochelle. I mean, the bullying itself and then the way the teacher handled it is
Well, I
just
recognize that's pretty normal.
outrageous.
It's like everything. It's like, here's the problem, instead of like the problem is bigger than the piece that could be made with it when we're handling it.
I mean, I'm not sure I understood that part. But
Like, let's say if there's something going wrong, then you bring everybody together, and it's just like
right,
it's just about a problem rather than the solution.
right, yeah. I mean, the fact that she kept you at your desk, I mean, obviously you should have been sent out of class
Mhm.
to talk to a guidance counselor or somebody.
I ended up
Um,
running home out the back doors. Pew!
I mean, it's just like hard for me to believe that a teacher would subject you to that. It's I mean,
It's
that
sad.
never should have happened, and, then somebody should have come in and talked to the class. people should have been held responsible.
Yeah.
And
Well, and
I
it's
mean,
crazy. She was my favorite teacher, and I still liked her after that, which I don't really understand either.
well, I mean, I guess
She gave me
know,
food, so I really liked her.
I mean, part of teacher training, and I think it is better at this point than it used to be, is that
Good.
they should be trained in dealing with the whole child, not just the academic aspects of being at school. Hopefully, most teachers would know that that's not the right thing to do. It's just incredible how mean children can be to each other.
And Simone, by the way, Brichelle, this conversation today, Simone has taught me that it is a bigger deal even than we think it is, because Brichelle is telling me a story and I have my stories, and everybody's got stories of how they are either a bully or the bullied, and it affects us throughout our lifetimes in insidious ways. And I want to thank you for doing the work that you're doing to shed light on it, because this is a big deal. It affects people. It affects marriages. It affects generationally. It affects people.
That's
and
right.
it's a really big deal. And we can't undersell it or poo-poo it as, oh no, it's just a rite of passage. And
or we got to toughen the kids up. That's what I heard, is it'll toughen you up.
Yeah, right. That's another myth. That's absolutely not true.
Yeah. And there are kids that are dying because of it, and that's totally unacceptable. Simone, you're going to have to come back and will you come back and talk with us some more?
I'd love to. Yeah, definitely.
And Brichelle, if somebody wants to reach out to Simone, how do they do it?
Well, I do believe the best place to go is SimoneEllin.com. Everybody, your last name is Ellin.
Are you there? I think she froze. Anyway, so it's SimoneEllin.com, and reach out to her. She looks kind of cute that way, doesn't she? Anyway, we are. I want to give you a moment to tell our audience anything that you would like them to know before we close out the show.
I want to say that fortunately, there's a lot of attention paid to children who are being bullied and their parents and how they can help each other. But much less about the long-term effects of childhood bullying in adulthood. And that if children don't get the help that they need when they're young, they will not recover from this. So hopefully children will get the help that they need while they're going through bullying. But if they don't, I want adults to know that there is help for them and that they need to take these things seriously and get help.
And I couldn't agree more. And I want to thank you so much for being here. You're going to have to come back because we got more to talk about. And
I'd love to.
And I want to thank you so much for being here. And hold on just a second. The president's calling. Hello, Mr. President, Miss President.
Hello, it's me. I'm so sorry. My internet went out and my whole modem's not working or turned on. So I need to get that figured out before our next show. But thank you so much for spending this time with us today, Simone, and doing the work that you do. I promise that I will work my best with Kevin to carry on this legacy and talk about these things more. I don't think that there's many things that I love that people do more than what you're doing. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
And go fix your modem so that you can be there for the next show, because our next show, she had electroshock therapy over 100 times, and it caused.
I will do everything I can to be there. Let me run down to the office and see if they can come and fix this right now.
Okay. And Simone, thank you so much for being here. And go to our website, which is Simone Ellin, Ellin. And thank you so much. That's right?
Ellin.
What did I say?
Said something.
It's probably because I was bullied as a kid. I can't speak.
Whatever.
It affects everything.
So it can.
Such an honor to have you, Simone. I can't wait to have you back and
So much.
good message.
And have a great day, everybody. Thank you for being part of Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald, where stories inspire and voices remind us of what truly matters. May today's conversation give you hope, courage, and a reason to keep moving forward. And just remember, till next time, be kind to one another because each other's all we've got.